Welcome to another episode of The Catholic Couple, having fun with faith, family, and friends. I'm your co-host, Bobby Fredrickson, and my wife is at an HSA meeting tonight, so she is not able to be with us tonight. But we do have a special guest. We have with us Isaac Hurd, who is local in our diocese here in Gary, but he is on a journey and ready to answer God's call. He's thinking about heading into the seminary. So I wanted to get his perspective. He's also into working out, which I love. So we're super excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for coming on, Isaac.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Bobby. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's just start for obviously people probably don't know who you are. I've following you also on Instagram, and I'm like, okay, this guy's working out. He's into God. I'm like, there's a big rise in men who are answering this call to the priesthood, who are also men who are not scared to be full of masculinity and those gifts. So you want to just try to introduce those people who are watching and listening, a little bit about yourself, this journey so far, and how the interconnection will get to the fitness as we get talking, because I think it's very important for people to understand how that ties our spiritual muscles and our physical muscles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a little bit about me. I'm born and raised in Indiana, so I'm in the Cherville area. I do personal training right now out in Oak Lawn in Illinois. So I'm working with kids ranging from 12 to college level students, different sports from soccer, football, baseball, you name it. It's more sports performance based. And that background really came because I played sports in college. I ran track at Franciscan University, and I played basketball at Lake Central. And sports has always been a major part of my life, even well before I started getting into my faith. So kind of having the two together just would be, kind of counterfeit if I didn't have both. So
Yeah, it's one of those things where, but as Catholics, we can learn that we can connect those two together. They don't have to be separate. It's not like, I play sports over here, I have Jesus over there, or, I only have Jesus on Sunday and the rest of my life is just doing whatever I want. It doesn't mean we have to be crazy or weird or anything like that. Our podcast, our tagline here is normalizing Catholicism. But what I try to do, and what we try to do in this podcast, is we try to bring Jesus into every aspect of our life, working out, playing sports, my work, whatever that you're doing, anything that you are doing, you can do it for God and offer it up and to invite Jesus into it like a normal conversation. So for you, how has sports helped you get closer to God? Has that been part of your journey on this mission that you're on now?
yeah, I would say it's been a big part, especially with running track. And there's a lot of like hours you got to put in. There's a lot of terrible workouts where you're getting those lactic acid workouts where you're just absolutely gassed. Even if you're atheist, you really start tapping into something at that point. You start getting tired. So you're going to have to, call on somebody at that point. But my background being, excuse me, my background being Catholic, I started seeing some more professional athletes living their faith out on social media and whatnot. And it was more of like a trend a little bit. I think maybe 2019, it still is a trend. But I started putting Bible verses in my Instagram posts, and I started doing the sign of the cross before I would start for my track meets and whatnot. And it just felt organic. It just felt natural. I think that kind of just feeds into what St. Paul was talking about, kind of giving the image of a race, of just like the Colosseum sort of background of Roman society. So it's kind of like they go hand in hand. And I was kind of tapping into that unknowingly of just having that faith and fitness approach to everything, so.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, the St. Paul reference, I always love that. It's like, I ran the race. I did well. I competed. It's like, our Protestant brothers and sisters, they don't like that fact that, it's just once I say this prayer, I'm saved and all those kinds of things. But St. Paul explicitly says that, he had to work out his salvation with fear and trembling. And he compares it a lot of times to shadow boxing, to running a race, to competing, that we're not supposed to compete for this perishable crown, but the crown that's going to be forever in heaven. So I love that way of talking about it, especially to men who, kind of sports kind of are natural or things that we do, that it helps us push us to have that discipline, to have that sacrifice. Like you're talking about these workouts, it's pushing you to your limits. And a lot of that can coincide with our spiritual lives, that we're called to sacrifice, we're called to suffer for God, we're called to do all these things, to do without and to control ourselves in order that we can, cultivate virtue, that we. So you're a trainer. I also used to be a trainer, so I know what goes into that. And that's also kind of what relates to our faith journey, that you're going to the seminary, that this is great training to try to help people to get better physically in a sport, to help their swing, help their vertical, to help their speed, their agility. And it's the same that you're going to have to be shepherding people once you become ordained, to try to help them to grow in virtue, how to handle defeat, how to handle adversity, how to train to, when they don't feel like going to mass, when they don't feel like praying, when they don't want to, you know they're having a hard time loving their spouse, all these difficulties. This is also great training, I think, for this, helping people train in the spiritual life. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think kind of the motto of like putting small deposits in so you can have a big, withdrawal later. The same principle applies in the spiritual and the physical realm. I don't think we should compartmentalize the human body and the human soul, like kind of separating the two, trying to sever the two. If I'm trying to get a kid better at his baseball swing, we start working in small increments. Like we start getting the muscle memory down, then we start getting his mobility and his agility up, and then it all comes together. So then in the game, it all gets put together. In the same way with virtue building, it's small increments. I think it's St. Francis de Sales that says the sun doesn't just rise all at once; it's in small increments. It goes. That same analogy of it, like the sun rises all, not at one time.
It's incremental. Yeah, it doesn't all of a sudden it's night and then it's dark. No,
right.
It takes some time. And that's with our faith journey. Yeah. A lot of times, like for me in my conversion, like a lot of things went away right away, but a lot of it was, I had to show up every day, one step forward, two steps back, so it's like one of those things where we have to also leave room for grace, that, we are sinners, we are fallen, we have that concupiscence where we have that room for grace. Just like you're going to have setbacks, you're going to have injuries, you're going to miss a workout because you're sick or there's things going on. So we have to also build in and have that grace as far as that. So let's shift gears a little bit. That what would you say would the biggest thing that helped lead you to answering the call to God to go to the seminary? Because this is a thing right now. We've been struggling for so long for vocation, especially, with people, young people, and especially, in big cities. And, Gary, we're doing okay, but like Chicago last year, I think only had two ordinations in the whole 2 million Catholics. So there's a crisis in young men answering the call to the priesthood. So what do you think was some of the biggest factors that have helped you to number one, first start discerning it, number two, to think that this is the call that God has for you?
A lot of it had to do with my visits. I did a lot of visits to religious organizations, different religious orders, the diocese, the Benedictines, the Norbertines. The common theme when I went on these visits was the brotherhood aspect was still there. I mean, these guys were not, just praying nonstop all day, didn't have any personalities or any backgrounds of any sort. I mean, some of these guys were doctors, some of them were lawyers, professional athletes, and they answered God's call. So that was really attractive to me, seeing, wow, I don't have to like lose my humanity to go and pursue the religious life. That was really a deciding factor for me. Like, wow, these guys are still cool. It's not like this some weird prayer club where we're not talking and we're silent all the time. And it was very eye-opening for me. So that kind of broke that barrier of that stigma that the world puts on the priesthood of they're just these isolated weirdos, So yeah, that was probably huge.
Yeah, no, that's big. I know my son's 9, and they had a vocations video from the diocese, and he saw the seminarians playing paintball, and he's like, wait, what? Like they get to paintball? Like, yeah, they're still people. Like they like to have fun and go out with their friends and play basketball. And yes, they pray and they do the liturgy of the hours and they go to mass every day, and those kinds of things. But it's like when you see, it's almost like when you're a kid And when you see your teacher out like at a grocery store, they're like, "Oh, you go to the grocery store?" It's like such a weird concept because we don't, a lot of times you don't get to see that. If you see your priest, he's only usually on Sundays. You're not
Right.
that close or not that involved. So to see that uphand by going to these visits to see, okay, they're like me, except for that they've given their life to God. That's great. So what so you said, so you went to all these different orders. So for those who don't know, explain to us a little bit, what's the difference between a diocesan seminarian and somebody who would go to a specific order, like you said, the Norbertines or the CFRs or the Benedictines or anyway, any of those kind of orders. Can you explain a little bit for those who may not understand or are kind of new to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, when I visited the Benedictines, they have something called postulancy. That's essentially like you're testing out to see if this is for you. You didn't really take a solemn vow of like, yes, I'm going to do this till death. This is just kind of like a getting your feet kind of wet sort of deal. And same thing with the diocesan priesthood. You have that. It's also called the novitiate. And you're kind of figuring things out. You're still discerning with the guys. You're taking light load of classes and whatnot. But the big difference comes in where you receive the habit. So you'd be taking something called simple vows. If you're entering into religious life, that means now, okay, I'm going to be able to wear the habit. I'm going to be living in community. It's more serious now. Whereas diocesan, you are going through your pre-theology, you're going through your propedeutic year. These are just like you're building up all the way to your theology, so you can eventually be ordained. The opposite in religious life is like I can stop before I become ordained. Once I become a brother of any order, I can just be a brother. I don't have to continue to study for the priesthood. Whereas if you're going diocesan priesthood, the end goal is the priesthood. So you have a little bit of nuance there, with the differences, of course, with opportunities of religious life versus priestly ministry. So
Yeah, and for obviously for diocese, they have to answer to what the bishop says. The bishop wants to put him there or send him there. They're called to be obedient to their bishops. How does that work with the religious orders? Once you commit to one order and that you live there in community, how does that hierarchy work?
yeah, so you have what's called an abbot that's going to be running the whole abbey, the monastery. So that's kind of like your superior, whereas like you said, diocesan priests are going to be subject to their bishop. So the hierarchy looks a little bit like, okay, if I want to enter into school, I want to go into school ministry or do mission work, I'd have to make a petition to my abbot, and then he would sign off on it saying, yes, you can go do this. Where, like you said, diocesan priesthood, if I wanted to get moved around, it's really not up to me. It's more of a bishop says, hey, you're going here. You take a vow of obedience, as you come into the priesthood. So you really can't say no. It's more of you're bound in that way sort of deal. So
Yeah, I know. That's I've been discerning, the diaconate for a while, and that's one of the things I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, I'm like not necessarily rebellious, but a little bit. It's like
sure.
not that I can't, submit to God and where He's calling me to do. It's just that I never really wanted to work for the church. I serve the church, but it also leaves me a little leeway where I don't have to answer to the pastor. Not that I'm trying to do anything illegal or weird. Like, hey, I just want to, you know, do Jesus together with people and to grow that relationship. It's like the meetings and it's like it can get out of control. It's like I just want to do life with other people, bring Jesus to the center of it and help people to grow. So for me, it's always been difficult. And right now my vocation primarily is being a father. My kids are 12 and 9. I don't think it's fair to them for me to take on something else. I'm already doing so much. But as they get maybe out of the house and get to high school, I'll revisit that a little bit more serious on discerning if that's the religious life is for me. I really love the mass. I fall in love with going to daily mass, and I didn't grow up being an altar server, and I get to help sometimes at the monastery. It's like, to me, it's so special that I would really want to do that. It's just that, like I said, this time in my life, I don't know if I'm ready to give up all my sovereignty to the bishop per se, because I'm still giving that to my wife and then to my children. So it's like it's
Sure.
very hard, but I don't want to be an old man at the same time either. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it. But I do have the prereqs basically knocked out. I went through the lay leadership program, which is like the LEM program through Mundelein and St. Zab. So part of the reason we kind of connected is that we have some mutual friends, and I know you went through the Exodus 90 program, but for those who are watching and listening, explain a little bit the difference of what it entails to join the seminary in an order versus going to a diocese, and how that's different, and why ultimately we're having this conversation, because I want to try to help you as much as I possibly can, or those people who are watching and listening hopefully will pour out their hearts and prayers, but also try to help you financially as well.
Of course, yeah. So, depending on your diocese, and this varies, if you wanted to enter into seminary, if you have any student loans or outstanding debts of any kind, usually the diocese is going to be sponsoring that and taking care of those debts for you, with minor things that you still have to pay off, like health insurance and other stuff like that, as far as taking care of yourself while you're in seminary. When it comes to religious orders, once you enter, like everything is taken care of. Except before you enter into religious life, you have to have debts cleared completely, because the community is taking on that liability of your debt. So once you enter into the religious order, then yes, you're taken care of with health insurance, with everything that you possibly need, food, housing, of course. But to get into it, you have to have no debt. So that's kind of how we ended up being on this podcast today.
Yeah, I never knew that. Like, I never even thought about that as something, it's like one of those things you don't even think about. It's like, no, I'm just gonna serve God and no big deal. And, God will provide, one of those kinds of things. But, yeah. So for you, obviously you went to college, you're working. It's not like, you got a mortgage and all these other things, but you do have, I presume most of your debt is like student loans and trying to pay for your
Yes.
college, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So what was the goal of trying to get it paid off, and what's the time frame here of when you're trying to go to this order and so you can enter, and uh where are you at on this progress of trying to wipe out your debt so you can go and serve the Lord?
Of course, yeah. So I have until August 31st to raise $33,000. That's my target goal. I've already raised close to 22,000 of that. So we're coming towards the end of the class here of fundraising, and I've been, doing pretty well. I mean, it's not really me; it's our Lord that's really blessing this whole process, because I never thought that this was going to be something in the cards for me, especially with having this huge amount of debt in front of me. Like you said before, I was like, yeah, I just want to serve God and have fun. I don't really want to worry about the finances. But then they were like, you got to look into the logistics of this, because it costs. It costs to make religious, and people don't really think about that aspect of trying to support vocations. It's always like, yes, like of course we're going to pray for you, but there needs to be things done, boots on the ground sort of deal. So yeah, that's definitely an overlooked aspect of it. But yeah, I'm coming up on entering into seminary with the Marian Fathers of the Immaculate Conception. They're based out of Stockbridge, Massachusetts. I will be entering in July of next year, so I still have a whole year in between to get my ducks in a row. So.
Well, explain a little bit about this order for those who aren't familiar so that they can know, like anybody who wants to support, we're going to put a link up. I'm going to have it in the show notes, and I'll do some Instagram posts and things like that. But, like I said, we are always saying, pray for more vocations. We want to help those vocations, but sometimes it does take, especially if you have the means and you have the ability to try to help out, any little bit will help. If we can get, 100 people to pitch in, then next thing you know, the debt is paid off, and then you'll be able to go and serve the Lord, not have to worry about those things anymore. And then you can just, get your schooling in and then prepare to give your life to God. It's like, that's the least that we can do to try to help you, is that you're going to give your whole entire life, that we can try to help set you up so that you can do that without having to have that hanging over your head, or they won't even let you in, really. So explain a little bit about this order. I know I'm familiar with Father Chris Alar, who's great. And if you don't know him, I'll share a link to his YouTube channel. He does some great apologetics and does a lot of teaching, and he's just got a great personality, and he's a great teacher. So that's exciting that you're going to be there. So give us a little explanation about how you made that choice and what you're signing up for.
Yeah, so the Marian Fathers of the Immaculate Conception, I mean, obviously, with the Immaculate Conception being in the name, they have a huge Marian devotion. And that really drew me to discern with them, because I have a huge Marian devotion. I'm pretty sure you can see I got Our Lady of Perpetual Help, and the Pieta, and I mean I'm always saturated in our Blessed Mother. She kind of
Saint,
saved my life.
I see Saint Max there, and
Yeah, yeah, we got the whole squad back there.
nice.
So yeah, I've always had a huge Marian devotion. The Rosary has helped me overcome countless numbers of sins and just helped me to become a better man. So the Marian devotion aspect, but then also the praying for the souls in purgatory. That's another one of their great devotions. And while I was in college at Franciscan University, there was a prayer card that I came across, and it was praying for the souls in purgatory. Just a whole litany for souls that have passed away. And something about it was just drawing me to it. I did it every night with my friends. I was like, hey, we got to do this. I don't know. Something's telling me we got to do it, but I just love it. It just brings me great joy. It's authentic. It's not like I'm forcing it, because some people want to force novenas or force some kind of devotions. But this is just like something that our Lord was like, yes, you need to be taking this into your prayer. So, and then mission work, of course. I mean, they do some mission work. They have international houses. I think they have some in Italy and varying different places. But I've always been drawn to mission work because I got exposed to that being at Franciscan. I went to Belize last March. And that was really eye-opening for me, just being able to pour myself out into the community and forget about self, really. And I think those three things together, I mean, it's just like a perfect fit for me. I mean, it's not even like I have to force myself into some model of the order. It's just that's who I am automatically. Like, even if I wasn't discerning, I'd have these devotions. So it was like a clear-cut decision for me, sort of deal. Like, yeah, smooth transition, let's do it, sort of deal.
That's awesome. And they have a big devotion also to the Divine Mercy, correct? They do a lot of, they have like a, don't they have like the national, some kind of national shrine, or they have something going on, I know, with the Divine Mercy.
Yeah, how could I forget? Yeah, Divine Mercy, huge, and you can see I got it behind me as well. In Stockbridge, yeah, the Divine Mercy National Shrine, Saint Faustina's Diary. I mean, they do a lot of printing press, so they do a lot of mass distribution of different prayer cards and books. And I mean, I got a half of their whole library on my library over there. I mean, they do Saint Joseph's consecration, Marian consecration, you name it, they do it. So yeah, I think it's great that they're doing that kind of work of, pushing Catholicism, making it mainstream, especially when we have media like yourself. You're making Catholicism mainstream and getting in front of people's eyes. So yeah, that's definitely something I'd like to do with my priesthood.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I just got back from Poland, and what I found out is that Saint Faustina and Saint Maximilian Kolbe came from the same diocese. So they
Wow.
grew up like literally like 30 miles away from each other. And it's just, it's one of those things where, you get these epicenters of, where the diocese is so important. They're obviously getting great formation from their priests, from the prayers. And, you said about the Immaculate, that's where Saint Maximilian Kolbe, where he set up his friary about 40 minutes outside of Warsaw. The town is literally named Immaculate. In Polish. It's Nikopolov, and it means immaculate. So he named the whole town after that. So now they have, they have a huge cathedral, and then the original chapel that he built, his radio station that he used to evangelize, and then his all the brothers that live there, and they have their own like beehives. They got their own farm, basically. They grow their own food. They have this whole community, but they really, you know, same with Faustina, they really had such a devotion to our Blessed Mother. And I know in my life how important in my conversion and this ongoing conversion is once I really started praying the rosary every day and doing the Angelus and the Memorare and just talking to the Blessed Mother like a mom. Like, like a lot of our prayers don't have to be so formal. Like, yes, I
Right.
pray the rosary. Yes, I pray the Divine Mercy every day. I do those. But I think a lot of Catholics can do a better job of just having a conversation with Jesus, having a conversation with God the Father, conversation with the Holy Spirit, conversation with your favorite saints, conversation with the Blessed Mother, because it's in that relationship. It isn't like if I just only talk to my wife with poems that were written by other people, it would be weird. It'd be like I'm only talking to her in sonnets by Shakespeare. Like at the end of the day, yes, these are prayers and God wants us to pray those. But if I only said those, it would be kind of weird. So it's like
Yeah.
it's the same with our prayer life. Like we have to find a better way to try to encourage other people to start that dialogue. At first, it's kind of weird because it feels like you're talking to yourself or you're talking to, you know, like imaginary person or something like that. But then you start to feel that that warmness, that closeness, that peace, the things that come with it. The more you do it, like for me, it's like it's really transformed my life. Like I start my day that way, and then I do the rote prayers, which I think are beautiful and helps me to meditate, you know, when you're doing and focusing on those mysteries. But if you're not incorporating an ongoing conversation with God throughout the day, I highly recommend that you try it and see how that works, because you know it's like Brother Lawrence talks about that, practicing the presence of God, and that's just what you're doing. It's like, yeah, it's nice. Before you eat, bless us, O Lord, and yes, great, but also like, hey, Lord, you know, thank you for this meal. Thank you for this opportunity I have, or thank you, I'm so thankful for this, or hey, what a beautiful day, Lord. Like anything like that, or you know what, I'm really having a hard time. I don't understand. Whatever that is, trying to incorporate that in, I think that it's very, very, very important. So,
Yeah.
so I digress. So Isaac, so I'm going to put the link down. So how people can try to help and support you. I didn't realize the timeline. I know you probably told me that it's that soon. So I'm going to try to get this up going, edited and posted it as much as possible. So I know you sent me the link in an email. Anything else we can do? Obviously, I'll tag your Instagram and stuff like that so people can follow along in this journey. Do you plan on continuing to do social media in the order, or is that not allowed?
I think for the first couple of years, I kind of it's like a media fast sort of deal,
Well,
but
that
we'll
sounds
see.
that sounds great. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, so guys, if you can't support Isaac financially, anything would help. But obviously, be praying for those who are entering into the religious life, the seminarians. But if you can help, anything would help. We want him to have some peace and to move on in his next step of his journey. And I really do appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with all those who are watching and listening.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, no problem at all. God bless you. Have a beautiful day.
All right.